Good morning, coaches. Today I'm going to be talking through a three-step process that I use for providing players with feedback in session. If you watched my previous video on why mistakes matter, you know that my philosophy is that we want practice to be a place where we can challenge players with the right level of difficulty that includes some element of failure, some element of mistake making. And so how we can communicate to players about what they are doing and what ways in which they might think about how they can improve, is important. So, a huge piece of practice and games, especially for young kids, is we want to get better. We want to, and that part of the process of making mistakes, and mistakes are okay. For how this works, it's really kind of guiding attention to the right kinds of information that might help them make different or better decisions. How it works, we'll typically start practice, we'll start with a play element. Maybe we're doing some 3v3s or some, 4v4 plus 2s. And I'll kind of watch for a little bit and I'll start to notice some different things that might be happening within that game that, I see kind of repeating over and over. Typically maybe a problem that is not being solved. And so, for example, a couple weeks back, we had a session and I noticed that this one team was really, really dominating the other team. They had lots of possession, but they were always in the attacking half, and they weren't finding space. And so I paused and I said, all right, hey, bring it in. And I brought the one team and I said, hey, I noticed that you guys had a lot of possession, and I noticed that the other team was never getting out of that half. And when I said this, a huge piece of it was just really, this is an observation, and it was neutral. There was no good, there was no bad attached to it. It wasn't like, you guys are doing so great, you're doing so awesome. On the other hand, it wasn't like, hey, you're not scoring goals with all the possession. What is going on here? It was just, I noticed you had a lot of possession. I noticed the ball was always in the attacking half, and I noticed there was always space behind you. And at that point, it's just an observation. It gets them kind of thinking about, what is that what we noticed as well? And I immediately follow up with, what did you think? And at this point, they get a chance to kind of reflect on, oh, and in that situation, they were like, yeah, we did. We had lots of shots. We were pressing them very high, and they weren't getting out. And yeah, there was space behind. And I said, would you like a suggestion? What if we? And that's the third step, that challenge. And the challenge is really an opportunity to provide a potential option, not so that they can copy paste that, but so that they can think about how might we solve the problem. Here is one way to solve the problem, but it's not one that you have to take. It's one that just to get them to think about what that process looks like. And so for them, I said, what would it look like if you low blocked? What would it look like if you step back and let them play to half? What would that do? And at that point, they started thinking, well, that would let them come forward. That might create space behind. And at this point in the process, I kind of stepped back and I let them continue to have that conversation amongst themselves to think about what they might do. And so what they actually tried to do, their focus for the next 5 minutes of that session, was they chose not to low block, but they chose to win possession quickly because they felt like that was a strength. But then rather than immediately try to attack, they tried to play back, open the field up by possessing in the defensive half before transitioning forward. So, with that process, it was really about, here is something we noticed that is happening, a particular problem that that we're struggling with. It's some kind of rate limiter. Involving the players that co-design, what do you think? Do you feel like that is something that you are recognizing as well? And providing an opportunity for them to problem solve as a group before they step back in. Can we pair their intention, this is what we notice, with how we can attune to better information? And for them, the information was like, where is the space? How can we manipulate the opponent to create space in a variety of different ways? And they selected one that was useful for them. And then, at the end, 4 and 5 aren't on here, but the fifth one was at the very end, right before we took a water break. I said, hey, how did that work? How did that seem to be for you? And for them at that moment, it actually worked pretty well. They were pretty happy. They scored like three goals in that 5-minute span. And so for them, it was a chance to be owners of the problem-solving process, with the coach as the guide for how we can help players, again, attune to the right information so that they can make different decisions in how they operate as individuals and as players. The number 4 that's not listed on here, it's kind of the unspoken one, but it's like, keep it short. This process generally takes less than a minute. I was able to meet with that one team while the other team collected the balls because they were all on the one side. And it was, took about a minute. And then, once I stepped away, they were able to jump right back in. And so, you don't take a lot of time out of the game, out of the process to have conversations. It's really about quickly attuning to the right information in a neutral fashion to get them thinking about what they can do and how they can continue to drive their own process forward. So in-session feedback, offer, I noticed, neutral. Ask, what do you think? And 3, challenge. What if we did X? Not to copy paste, but to copy the process. Cheers.